Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to another Pokemon X and Y analysis video. Today's video is going to be all about Malamar, so let's get started by taking a look at this Pokemon's typing, abilities, and stats. So to start things off, Malamar is a Dark Psychic type Pokemon introduced in Generation 6, and the first Pokemon thus far to possess this very interesting typing. With this typing, you have only one resistance, which is actually an immunity to Psychic type moves, and then you also are 4 times weak to bug moves and weak to fairy, and then everything else hits you for neutral. It's the weirdest type combination possible in terms of weaknesses and resistances that I could think of. So it's just very strange overall how this typing works, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. As for the abilities though, the first one that it gets is known as Contrary, which is an ability that inverses all stat changes, meaning that, for example, if your opponent goes for a Crunch and you get the defense drop for Malamar with the Contrary ability, you will actually turn that into a defense boost instead, and this will most commonly be seen on Malamar through the use of Superpower, in which it will be able to increase its physical attack and defense by 1 stage, as opposed to the normal effect of Superpower, which will drop your physical attack and defense by 1 stage. As for its next ability, it is known as Suction Cups, which is a pretty cool ability that allows you to not be phased out by moves such as Roar and Whirlwind, and also Dragon Tail and Circle Throw and all those good things. And then lastly, its hidden ability is known as Infiltrator, which is an ability that allows you to bypass the effects of Reflect, Light Screen, Safeguard, and Substitutes. As for its stats though, Malamar has base 86 HP, 88 defense, and 75 special defense, meaning that overall this Pokemon can be pretty physically bulky. It has a nice HP number with a pretty good defense stat. Its special defense is a little bit lower though, but it's not that big of a problem, especially because it's so easy to increase this Pokemon's defense through the use of Superpower, which is something you'll see a little bit on the sets that I have for you today. But as for its attacking stats, it has a really nice base 92 physical attack, and then unfortunately its special attack is only base 68, which is not that high, but very unfortunate because Malamar actually has a fantastic special attacking move pool. So maybe potentially in the future when we know more about how this Pokemon works in whatever tier it's put in, there'll be definite use for special attacks on like a mixed set to beat some of its counters, because some of the moves it does have access to are like Thunderbolt and Flamethrower, which are really cool. But lastly, Malamar does have a base 73 speed, which is a little bit on the slow side, but should not be slow enough to discourage you from running a Scarfed set on it or anything like that, because it still is quite a bit faster than many Pokemon that it could be against if you do put a Choice Scarf on it, or you just decide to max its speed in general using a different item or something like that. But to kick off the movesets for this video, I'm going to show you the one that you've probably seen me use in a battle video first, but also with a couple of other options that I wasn't running on that particular set, but could also be useful for you to use on this type of Malamar. So we're going to start this one off with a Jolly Nature to increase its speed but lower its special attack, and for the ability we're going to be going with Contrary. As for the EVs, we're going to put 252 into its physical attack, 4 into its special defense, and then 252 EVs into its speed to give it its max physical attack and speed possible. And for the item, there are 4 possible options, the first of which being a Choice Scarf, which will boost your speed by 1 stage while locking you into a move, a Choice Band to boost your physical attack by 1 stage while locking you into a move, a Life Orb to boost the damage of all of your attacks but having a negative 10% recoil every time you do attack, and then also possibly an Expert Belt as a move to go with on this set to allow you to increase the damage of your super effective attacks that are able to hit your opponent for some big damage. But for the moves, we're going to start off with Dual Stab on this Malamar, so we're going to be going with Psycho Cut for your Psychic type move and Night Slash for your Dark type move, which gives you some pretty good coverage overall. But when you combine this with Superpower, overall, you can pretty much cover the majority of Pokemon in the game for at least neutral damage. And the big reason for using the set just in general is because of Superpower, which, as I mentioned before, will be boosting your physical attack and physical defense by 1 stage every time you attack with it because of the Contrary ability. And this can be very deadly, especially if you do run a Choice Scarf set, which is the one that I prefer to run with this Malamar, because you will outspeed a ton of opponents. Superpower, just lock yourself in on that move if you're able to hit everything on your opponent's team for neutral damage, or you think you'd be able to just bust through any Pokemon that are resisting it with Superpower, and just sweep from there, because you're going to be boosting your attack every time you go for a Superpower, and you will also become increasingly physically bulky as you go for it. However, if you do use any of the other items on the set, you can obviously switch up your moves, which will allow you to definitely take out a ton of different opponents that you're going to be running into. For the last move on this set, you can either go with Switcheroo, which works especially well with the Choice Scarf and Choice Band sets, as you could switch your item off to an opponent, which will then allow them to have their moves locked in to a specific attack, which could be very unfortunate for them because they might be a wall that needs use of all of their attacks and recovery and things like that, and you could essentially cripple them right off the bat with using Switcheroo. But you could also possibly run Destiny Bond, which is what the D bond stands for, as a way to potentially take an opponent down with you if you are able to outspeed, which is going to be very useful, especially for this Pokemon and a Scarf set. If you think that you're probably just going to need to sacrifice this thing, you bring it in Destiny Bond, and then it's whatever the heck the threat was that was in is now taken out. So that can be very useful on this Pokemon as well. The one thing to keep in mind, though, about using Malamar in general, and especially on this set because we aren't running any defensive investment, is that this Pokemon is extremely susceptible to being U-turned on. And this is something that's just kind of the biggest problem in the world for this thing because of its 4 times weakness to Bug. So the reason why I wanted to note this is because if anything is faster than Malamar and has access to U-turn, you probably won't be able to effectively use this until that threat is taken out. So it's just something to keep in mind. Like right now, a lot of people are using Genesect, and you probably will need to switch out your Malamar every single time a Genesect comes in because it's going to U-turn on you, and you are probably going to die in the process. So that's just something to keep in mind. This Pokemon is fairly weak to that. So anything that's faster than Malamar and has access to U-turn will pose a pretty big problem for this set. Up next, we have a more defensive take on the previous set. So we're going to start this one off by giving Malamar a careful nature to increase its special defense but lower its special attack, and for the ability, we're going to be going with Contrary. As for the EVs, we're going to put 224 into its HP, 252 into its special defense to max that out, and then the remainder 32 EVs into its speed to give Malamar enough speed to outspeed Pokemon of base 75 speed. And for the item, we are going to be going with Leftovers as a way to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn. But as for the moves on this set, we are going to be running Substitute this time first, which is going to allow us to get behind a protective barrier to shield us from attacks and statuses, and allow us to essentially set up behind through the use of Superpower. And Superpower is going to be used on this set, along with the 2 other moves of Psycho Cut and Night Slash on the previous set. So it's more of a defensive alternative to the previous one, where you were having a lot of special bulk and also a lot of HP, and obviously Substitute to protect you from attacks while boosting with Superpower. So this can definitely be a very effective way to use a Contrary Malamar, as well as the just full offensive one, as this one will be able to take hits a lot easier. Now it is important to note, though, that this generation, Bug Buzz actually hits through substitutes, which is kind of cool and also kind of unfortunate for this Malamar, because even if you are behind a substitute and something like a villain comes in with Bug Buzz, you have to switch out because even though you have the substitute up, they're probably going to KO you with the Bug Buzz. So that's just something to keep in mind with this set in particular, but it does give you more freedom on this set to tank hits and you switch up your moves to allow you to take down a lot of opponents. Also on this set, you can be very easily phased out, which is a little bit unfortunate, but hopefully you can get some big damage in before you are able to be phased out by your opponent. But overall, the coverage that you have should suffice against most Pokemon, at least be able to allow you to do something before you have to switch out or before you are forced out by an opponent. Moving on to the more defensive set portion of this video, we're going to start this one off by giving Malamar a careful nature to increase its special defense but lower its special attack. And for the ability, we can either go with Infiltrator or Contrary, though I'm more so leaning towards Infiltrator on this set, just because Contrary's uses on this set are really only up to chance, maybe that your opponent has Sticky Web up and you want like the +1 speed boost, or if you think you're going to get a defense drop from another move. It's possibly useful, but honestly I think Infiltrator is the way to go, but I just wanted to list it as an option. But as for the EVs, we're going to put 220 into its HP, 116 into its defense, 140 into its special defense, and then 32 EVs into its speed to make Malamar a little bit faster and give it some nice mixed bulk all around. And for the item, we could either go with Light Clay or Leftovers, depending on exactly what you want Malamar to be doing on the set. Light Clay, though, is obviously going to work fantastically in combination with the first 2 moves on the set, as it will be boosting the turns of both Reflect and Light Screen from 5 turns to 8. But if you do want the added recovery on Malamar, you are more than welcome to go with leftovers to give it some more survivability. However, using Light Clay could also be very useful to not only support your team, but if you do decide to pair up Malamar defensively with a Fairy-type Pokemon, many of which have access to Wish, and also many of which resist the Bug-type moves that will most likely be coming your way. So that is something to keep in mind. And even poison types actually would work really well because they resist both the fairy and the bug type moves that you are weak to. But it's really beneficial to have a Wish Passer with this type of Malamar just because it doesn't really get its own recovery if you don't give it leftovers. But the screen support is very useful. But as for the main attacking move of the set, we are either going to go with one of your stab attacks in Psycho Cut or Night Slash, or if you think you might benefit more from running Foul Play on this set, you are more than welcome to, as it will be using your opponent's physical attack against them as opposed to your own. But in most cases, I think Psycho Cut or Night Slash should suffice, but Foul Play can be very beneficial. And for the last move on this set, we are going to be going with Malamar's signature move, which is Topsy-Turvy, which inverses the stat changes on your opponents. So for example, if they have a Nasty Plot, they'll be at +2 special attack. You bring in your Malamar, you go for Topsy-Turvy. They are now instead at -2 special attack. So this set in itself is just the biggest slap in the face to a lot of setup sweepers because Topsy-Turvy will inverse all of those stat changes. And because of Reflect and Light Screen, you can probably live a boosted hit and then go for Topsy-Turvy to inverse them. It's also important to note that if you do have Infiltrator on this set, you are able to basically shut down the majority of sweepers that like to set up behind a substitute, similar to the previous set, as you will be able to Topsy-Turvy them through a substitute. So that's just something to keep in mind on how great this set can be for putting a stop to a lot of setup Pokemon. And also Foul Play potentially could be very beneficial if you are up against a Pokemon that's using Swords Dances to boost its physical attack or something like that. So it can be very useful to have any of these moves on the set, and this will definitely be a very fantastic support set for Malamar that could also potentially stop a sweep if it's about to start to happen because of your opponent boosting their stats. And lastly, I have this interesting set that looks really cool in theory, but might not be particularly useful in practice. So I honestly want to see you all try this one out and tell me what you think about it, because I think it's a very cool idea, but it might not necessarily be the best thing to use on Malamar. So we're going to start this one off by going with an Impish Nature to increase its physical defense, but lower its special attack. And for the ability, we can either choose again between Infiltrator or Contrary. But as for the EVs, we're going to put 224 into its HP to almost max that, along with 252 EVs into its defense to max that out, and then putting the remainder 32 EVs into its speed to make Malamar a little bit faster, along with leftovers for your item to allow you to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn. As far as this set is concerned though, it is essentially designed to take full control of your opponent's stat boosts and use them to your advantage or your opponent's disadvantage. So we're going to start this set off by going with Swagger as a way to not only confuse your opponents to potentially mean that they won't be able to attack, but also to boost their physical attack by 2 stages, which will in turn increase the damage they do to themselves when they hit themselves in confusion. But to also capitalize on the attack boost that we'll be giving to our opponents, we're going to be going first with Foul Play as our main attacking move of the set to work in combination with Swagger, as Foul Play is dependent upon your opponent's attack as opposed to yours. So we are going to be boosting their physical attack by 2 stages, which means that Foul Play will then in turn be doing more damage. We're going to skip over the next move real quick, and we're just going to talk about also how Topsy-Turvy could work amazingly with this set. Because for example, if you are up against a physical attacker, you do not want to really be boosting their physical attack anymore with Swagger, even though you could capitalize a little bit on that with Foul Play. But if you don't want them to be really doing much damage, you could in turn just Topsy-Turvy the Swagger boost and turn it into a -2 physical attack to your opponent, which will then mean that if they are a physical attacker, that they probably won't really be able to do that much damage to you because we are maxing our physical defense on this set. So that is something to keep in mind. So you could either go with Foul Play to capitalize on their attack boost and use it against them, or go with Topsy-Turvy to completely cripple them and make it so that they won't really be able to do a lot of damage, which in turn could lead you to have a free switch into something else that could easily take an attack, maybe set up or do something else to stall out your opponent or something like that. But for your second attacking move on this set along with Foul Play that we skipped over, We could either go with Psycho Cut, like before on most of the attacking sets for the dual stab between Foul Play and Psycho Cut, or if you choose Contrary as your ability, you could also go with Superpower as a way to boost your physical attack and physical defense by 1 stage every time you go for it, which can be very useful on this set. However, keep in mind your only other attacking move will be Foul Play, which does not really apply to Superpower because you're using your opponent's physical attack, but the physical defense boost can be nice. But Psycho Cut obviously is a great option for just dual stab purposes and will allow you to do quite a bit of damage to everything, though most dark types will be able to handle the stab on this Pokemon because they are obviously immune to Psychic and resist Dark. So that is something to keep in mind as you are using the set. But overall, I think it's a very cool application of Topsy-Turvy, as you can obviously completely cripple physical attackers, or with Foul Play, use their boosted physical attack with Swagger to your advantage. But that is it for this video, everybody. So I wanted to thank you all for watching my analysis on Malamar, and I think I might have mentioned this before, but I just want to specify, because of this Pokemon having Contrary, and because of the new entry hazard Sticky Web, Contrary Malamar can be a very effective Pokemon to use, as its speed will be boosted upon entry if your opponent sets up a Sticky Web. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind when using this guy, as if you are having troubles dealing with Sticky Web, perhaps Malamar might be the Pokemon for you, as you can boost its speed every time it switches in with Sticky Web up. So I just want to leave that as a little aside at the end, or addenda is what I meant to say at the end, just so that you all knew about that. But anyways, I want to thank you all for watching. As I just said, feel free to follow me on Twitch and on Twitter, and bookmark the database that will have all of these sets as well as all the other sets in the analysis series. It will be in the description, obviously, for ease of access. And then also feel free to join the Zat at zat.com/pokerounds. But that is it for this video, everyone. So thank you all for watching. Take care, goodbye, and I will see you all next time.